Welcome everyone to our webinar, Understanding Reactivity in Dogs. We chose that name on purpose because we want you to help understanding a little bit better what is actually going on with reactivity. Sometimes it doesn't seem to be as straightforward as it is. And it's probably one of the biggest topics and one of the most complex when it comes to dog behavior. I would say probably the vast majority of dog trainers would be out of a job if there wouldn't be the topic of reactivity. Also, you may have heard that before, but there is no magic bullet. Sadly, it's a journey that we are very happy to take you and your dog, to help you and your dog to go on to. And reactivity training takes time, commitment, patience, and consistency. And sometimes, you got to accept that you can reduce things, you make them a little bit less reactive, but in some cases, they may never go away. And, just being able to accept that is also an important thing. So let's get right into it. So quickly, what is reactivity? Reactivity, by definition, is the abnormal level of arousal in a response to a normal stimulus. So we often see that coming from fear, anxiety, or frustration. Think about, your kettle dog seeing a bus go past and they suddenly go rah, 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 and lose the plot. Or a dog seeing, something on TV, a horse on TV, and absolutely losing it. So that's what we call a normal stimulus. For us, it's a normal stimulus, and the dog's reaction to it is over the top. It's often also related to a heightened state of arousal. So that's what we see often: cortisol, adrenaline, they go up. Sometimes also the dopamine goes up, depending on what sort of emotional bucket your dog is in. And conflicting emotions can increase arousal even more. So one of these examples is often you might see a puppy that has, or a young dog that played a lot and very boisterous and very full on with other dogs during the puppyhood. At the same time, that dog was a bit unsure about other dogs, a bit insecure, used over-exaggerated play as a way to control the outcome of these play interactions. And then they are, let's say, a year and a half, and they look at other dogs, and all of these emotions are coming up at the same time: the insecurity, at the same time the overexcitement that was in a way pattern during that puppy period or that teenage period. And suddenly they get flooded with all of these hormones, and poof, you have a dog on the leash that goes, whoa, 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 I see another dog, and loses it a bit. So that's one of the common things we see. It doesn't always need to be that one emotion. Emotions drive behavior. What else influences reactivity? We see genetics, we see the dog's personality, we look at the environment, the lifestyle, the experiences a dog has or had, inadequate socialization, or the lack of socialization. Learned behaviors is a big thing. So kind of how long and how frequently has your dog been doing and repeating these behaviors? They often get pattern. And also the handler, the person at the end of the leash, or the owner, the person that's taking the dog into that environment where they have the reactive behavior. Reactive behaviors, you've probably, most of you have witnessed them at some point, can include behaviors like stiffing, staring, lunging, vocalization, growling, barking, whining. So some of them, they are more like the onset, like the stiffing, the staring, and then it goes lunging, vocalization, and barking, and things like this. This is where we really see the reactivity shine through. Ways for a dog to deal with a perceived threat. So this is coming out of the fear and anxious emotion is often a flight, fight, freeze, or flirt. And what you often find is that generally dogs try to avoid a conflict. They try to avoid being harmed. So they may have tried to get into flight, so to get away from what they were scared of. They can't because they are on leash. Over time, they learn, well, the only option that I do or that I have is to bark, 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 bark. Then mom pulls me away, or the other dog on the other side of the road. Maybe they get pulled away because your German Shepherd just barks at the little Maltese, and a Maltese lady thinks, oh, I'll better pick up my Maltese. And so that fight response then probably gets rewarded because all this dog wanted was probably some spice. Then there's the freeze. Freeze is, we see that less in reactivity quite often on the onset. So the dog goes, oh, wow, I might just freeze, but the other dog keeps coming towards me. Well, now I need to do something about it. You also see the flirt. Sometimes the flirt is very common in like puppies. They often do this flirt, this roll over, this lip licking on the side, a lot of this appeasement behaviors. So they are the common responses. But the fight is probably when you see the whole noise and lunging and all of that going on. So how does it compare to aggression? Aggression can be part of the display of reactive behaviors, depending on the intention. So when you look at aggression definitions, there's a whole lot and there's a whole spectrum of definitions, but I like the ones from Roger Abrantes, which is one of the leading ethologists in this world. And he basically says it's directed towards the elimination of competition from an opponent. And a very nice definition is from Michael Chicascio, who is one of the experts in aggressive dogs. And he says it's basically an action that is intended to increase distance to a threat or to make that threat stop or something stop. So, and then this is probably one of the things that I really like to drive home to owners with reactive dogs is the layered stress model. So I came across it through Chad Mackin and Jay Jack, two amazing trainers from the US. And it talks about that the trigger quite often is only the top of the volcano. It's what makes that whole thing eventually explode. But there's a lot of layers underneath that in most cases you need to look at all of them. And while maybe not all of them apply, in most of the time, in most of the cases, it's not just the trigger that makes your dog blow up. So when we look at that, we look at the base, that's our communication. So the dogs and humans, we are different species, we talk differently, and quite often we kind of forget a little bit to look at what our dog is telling you. So we need to look at what their emotions are, we need to look at their body language, we need to act early, blah, and we need to improve our communication with the dogs. So then a big one is also health, and that quite often gets overlooked. So there is dogs that have hip dysplasia and hence are worried about having other dogs coming in their space because they're in pain. There might be a dog that has bowel diseases or aching stomach because they have a food intolerance that makes them feel sick. There is medication that can also cause aggressive behavior or can cause a heightened state of arousal. There are things like thyroid conditions that cause a sudden onset of aggressive behaviors. There are dogs that are physiologically impaired, like take an older dog who suddenly his vision is starting to get a bit funny or his hearing is getting funny. There's dogs with allergies that just don't feel right. So I think one of the things that I really like people to do is before they start working on reactivity is to look at if their dog is actually to get a clean bill of health and from a pretty holistic vet with a holistic approach. Then secondly, there is lifestyle. So this is where we look at how fulfilled is my dog. Do they actually feel safe? A dog that was rescued from a rural property and now lives in the middle of Sydney's King's Cross is probably going to struggle with that. That lifestyle will really challenge this dog, and there are no robots. So the freedom also to express their normal behavior, their normal behaviors. Is the dog allowed to do that? Is the dog genetically fulfilled? So this is something we really need to take in account. Sometimes I see dogs, they are quite overwhelmed. I see dogs that are very underwhelmed, and I see some of them that are both at the same time. Then clarity. So clarity is around, does your dog have clarity on what's expected for them? It's driving a lot around like the obedience, but also do they have a misunderstanding of what their action causes? And for example, clarity is if you ask your dog to, for example, sit, and they are about 1.5 meters pulling on the leash right in front of you, and you go sit, 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 and your dog may have never heard or never trained a sit that comes from behind them. While usually you stand in the kitchen with your cookie in your hand and you say sit, the dog's right in front of you looking at you, then this is clarity. Your dog will have no idea how to perform that command because they've never learned it in that sort of picture. Then there is the leash. So the leash is also a big one because there's a lot of what's the leash doing? Is it just there to make sure that your dog can't go any further? Is it causing frustration for your dog? Is it just a restraint tool? Is the leash actually a communication tool? Is it loose? Can the leash, does the leash assist your dog to be relaxed? Does your dog know how to walk politely on a leash, or how to stay calm on the leash? Or just does the leash, bringing the leash out, does that make your dog go super hyper aroused? And then eventually we just have our trigger. So, and that is generally the thing that sort of the last straw. So really look at this model when you try to find out what's going on with your dog. Next one. Next one is also be mindful of what we call trigger stacking. So when you think about of your dog and your dog's capability to deal with arousal and stress in the sense of positive as well as negative stress, could be exciting or like negative stress, think about it as a bucket. So your dog's bucket has only a certain size, and what goes into this bucket, and does your dog also understand, or is there like somewhere a hole how the stress can be released? Is your dog's bucket like quite old? Is it quite fragile, or is it solid? When you look at the image on the right hand side, this is what we talk about trigger stacking. So let's say we see this quite often, you put your dog on the leash in your apartment, you get the leash out and your dog's like, yeah, we're gonna go for walkies, gets excited. So you're already putting a layer of cortisol and adrenaline into that bucket. Then you go in the elevator, your dog might actually not like the elevator. And, you go in the elevator, another thing fills in the bucket. Then a little child steps into the elevator and, wants to pet your dog. And your dog's like, oh, not here, not in the elevator. So the next thing pays in. Then you're leaving the elevator, you go outside, a cyclist just swooshes past your dog on the footpath. Your dog puts another thing in this bucket. Then a bus goes past. And then all they need to do is, usually they probably wouldn't blow up at old geriatric Labradors, but now this old geriatric Labrador just wobbles along the street, just gives him the look, and your dog loses it. So trigger stacking is a huge one. And quite often when I hear people say, hey, I don't know, sometimes he reacts, sometimes he doesn't. This is something, especially for like dogs that are easily triggered with things in the environment or that are anxious, that really, really, you need to understand that concept. All right, so now big thing is, how do we manage or treat reactivity? So the very first thing I want you to do is look under the bonnet. I'm referring back to this layer stress model. So big one. Then we want to look at changing the dog's emotional state. So quite often when our dog blows up, we start to get mad. We're like, oh my God, stop this. I don't know what to do. One easy exercise is, your dog is about to blow up or is in the process of blowing up, and you just take a hand of food in your, take some food in your hand and just sort of try put it under their nose. If they take it, they take it, or scatter it on the floor in front of them. There will be a point where they probably stop what they are doing, and then that food is there and they might be able to think. They probably, if you want them to sit or you are waiting for I wait it out. I wait for them to finish blowing up until they are calm. You might wait a while. So a big thing is always we try to change the dog's emotion. And I do this with dogs that are, reactive out of a fear response, but also out of a frustration response. However, keep in mind, if that is your only strategy, you might actually get a dog who learns that this becomes a bit of behavior chain, who learns that I'll bark at that thing and mom is going to pay me for it. So just in the very early stages, it might be just loosen your dog up a little bit and also changing their perception. So I've referred to a video of Chad Mackin at the end in my source notes, solving dog reactivity. It's on YouTube, and he explains it in quite a lot of detail and really nicely. Then counter conditioning. So that goes a little bit along with that exercise where we change the dog's emotional state. Counter conditioning is where we present at the same time as the trigger is presented or the thing that my dog is fearful of, I present, for example, something nice to my food. I present to my dog, I present food, for example. So I try to pair something that is unpleasant with something that is pleasant to change my dog's emotional state. Desensitization is also a technique we quite often use with like controlled setups, for example, where we get our dog to, in a gradual setup, to desensitize them to the trigger and to the different intensities of the trigger. And one of the things that I often do with reactive dogs, depending obviously on the dogs, not suitable for all of them, but for some dogs, having controlled socialization to build their confidence can be immensely powerful. There might be socialization groups in your area, or usually you would be looking for a confident dog that your dog can just hang out with, that it doesn't get bothered by, or maybe where they can learn, hey, I can play with other dogs, some place where they learn to negotiate space and to negotiate pressure with other dogs. So that can be super powerful. And I've seen dogs really nicely turn around with this. However, very big caveat here is this is not your dog park. You will not find controlled socialization in your dog park. So, but yeah, it's a very powerful tool. Then we want to create, so one of the things I like to do is to create a new auto response to the trigger. So there are games like the Look at That game that I've referred to all of them in my notes at the end of the presentation. The Look at That game, or the engagement disengagement protocol, that's one of my favorite, where we teach the dog to look at the trigger, we mark that, we feed our dog, so there's a counter conditioning component. And then over time, after a number of repetitions, very quickly usually that happens, your dog will go, oh, every time I look at the bicycle, you say yes and you feed me. So now you wait a second, then you turn, your dog will probably in the next repetition, you don't mark, you wait for your dog will go, why is she not saying yes? I should get a treat. We'll turn around, look at you, and you mark that, and you pay your dog really well. So the idea is to go from engagement with the trigger to disengagement and create almost an auto response. So when your dog sees the trigger, they look at you. That's a method that I used for my German Spitz when he was chasing bicycles. So that worked really well. And it only took us like 2 sessions or something to get rid of that. Then you want to avoid the pressure cooker. Pay attention to the trigger stacking is a super important one. Avoid the staring. I often see, like most of the time, is you can actually count in your head. Your dog looks at the trigger, you count 21, 22, 23, and most of the times after 3-4 seconds, they start to blow up. It's just that bucket, that cup can only hold so much. So I like to step in way before these 3 seconds are over. So usually they look at the trigger, and within a second or two, I try to have them out of the staring. And keep in mind, you might not be able to influence the trigger, but you can influence how you and your dog deal with it. So that is in regards to when you see the trigger, we often expect, oh, this person should move out of the way, or this person is coming too close, but the power is in your hands, guys. And I think your dogs, they need you to help you know, you are the person who has the rational brain at that moment. So they need you to assist you in that moment. Impulse control and obedience. So they are very, very big ones. I quite often see that dogs with reactivity or issues have poor obedience. So, and I mean that not in a bad way. I just mean it in the sense that the obedience that it requires for your dog to be able to emotionally control themselves is not sufficient enough. If your dog wasn't reactive, that probably wasn't a problem. But because your dog is reactive, they need to have a bit more obedience under the obedience behind. So we want to teach them to perform some basic obedience in the presence of increasing distractions. You know, for example, if you have a dog that is ball crazy, but also is reactive to dogs, why don't we teach them to hold a 5-minute down stare while you are tossing balls left, right, and center, and they are not allowed to get them? So this is really a bit the level that you want to work yourself or work your dog up to. Your dogs need to understand the leash. A lot of reactivity most of the time happens only when they are on leash, because there's also this element of frustration or them not being able to get away. So loose leash walking is a big one for me to set the tone of a walk and the relationship. So what I mean by that is I want my dog to walk on a loose leash next to me. If he is on a tight leash, about 1.5 meters or 1 meter ahead of me, then my dog will be the first one to deal with the problem. So if I have my dog next to me or slightly behind me, then I always have a chance to intercept and say, hey, we're going to change direction, we're going to walk away. But none of that is possible when your dog is on a tight leash, right about 1.5 meters behind you, and you're just trying to pull them backwards. Imagine that, you know, you want to go forwards and someone else is pulling you backwards. Usually that causes even more conflict, so which will increase the arousal, which makes your dog more likely to blow up. I want a loose leash to also support relaxation. There is a really nice game from Leslie McDevitt. It's the 1, 2, 3 game. Basically, it's very simple. So you count 1, you have your dog on leash, you count 1, 2, 3, and on 3, you feed your dog a treat, preferably next to your, let's say, right or left hip, depending on what side your dog walks on. And if you repeat that, it becomes very predictable for your dog. And on the count of 3, your dog will start looking for that treat and also target and gravitate towards that side where the food reward is presented. And I also want my dogs to have a very good leave it command. The way how I teach leave it commands for reactive dog is that they are not permitted to take what they are supposed to leave. So if you think about, you know, I'm asking my dog to leave the food bowl, and then, you know, they wait for a second and then I allow them to get it. That for me is a wait command. My leave it is, I'm going to say leave it, and my dog is not allowed to go back. So they have to disengage. They will never get rewarded from what they are supposed to leave. Reason for that is I want to diminish hope on being able to access what they are supposed to leave. I want what they are supposed to leave to be off the table. I don't want to create any expectation, any arousal for trying to pursue the thing. Again, this is all to build emotional control. Sorry, there we go. Next one. Listen and observe your dog and yourself. So that's a big one. It's probably a very hard one, because at some point, most of the time what happens is, you know, it may have started off with your dog being a bit unsure, like kind of they see another dog coming up, they sit or they freeze, so they get unsure, and we're like, oh no, come on, let's walk, let's keep walking towards the other dog. So, okay. And at some point they learn that all of these behaviors, oh, I'm unsure about the other dog, I'm assessing things, don't know what to do. Eventually they learn that, you know, these behaviors, they don't work. So I might just go to lunging, barking, yelling, because that will get mom to take me away. So we really want to teach our dogs that we listen to the subtle signals. This is very important. Like, you know, we want to recognize if the ears change, we want to see how their breathing is, and so on. We want to understand where your dogs and your thresholds are. You know, where are you and your dog's arousal and stress levels up? So let's say you are about to take your dog for a walk, you had a stressful day at work, and you're dreading the walk that's coming up because you know that this is going to be beep show, not a nice event. So you're already dreading, you're already stressed. So this probably won't help your dog. So I want you to recognize these things. I want you to recognize these things also in yourself. I want you to pay attention to the bucket, to your own, but also to your dog's bucket. And very important is in that regard is that we do early intervention. We behaviorists or trainers, we often say behavior gets stronger and more ingrained the more I repeat it. If most of the times when I hear the reactivity journeys, it's like, oh, it started off and it just got worse and more sticky over time. And that's very normal. With any behaviors, the more I do them, the more proficient I get at it. So you see, if you, for example, have a dog that barks the mailman away, they do it the first few times, but their barking over the years or over the months gets more and more intense as they keep chasing mailmen away. They're like, wow, I'm doing a great job. So same here, we want to stop them from rehearsing behaviors that we want to actually get rid of. One tip that I always give to my clients is get someone to video, get a friend or family member to walk behind you and video you and your dog and watch that in slow motion, like pause it and really look at what your hands there do and things like this. I often see, you know, people when they have a reactive dog, they hold the leash like super tight and like high up and, you know, like, or wrapped around their hand, like super tight because they are worried their dog might lunge at someone. So the dog has only that much leash and they are tense and their shoulders are like this. So, and then, you know, then someone comes who has never worked your dog, you know, maybe a trainer like me, and we take the leash and our shoulders relax and we go back and suddenly you see the dog's whole body language change a lot. So that's a common one. So look, get someone to video you and pick up on these little signals. Here's a couple of videos, a couple of photos. So here you see a dog, the ears are going back, the stare, you see his eyes, you see the whale eyes, you see his head shifting forward, and then he does a little bit what we call the agonistic pucker or the offensive pucker. So he curls up the upper lip and he starts to show his teeth. Then this dog here shows the dog on the bottom left. Like you can see him turning away, he's cowering, his tail is starting to tuck in. He just doesn't want to deal with that situation. Here's a bit of a lip lick, nervous lip lick in this case. You can see his whole body posture is like there's a lot of tension in there. He's unsure, the ears are back. And there's a big yawn here, another sign of like, hey, I just don't want to deal with it. So look for stress signals. One of the things I've listed here a few, you know, like, and you've probably, some of you have heard of that before, you know, they've seen this in your dog. One of the things that I like my clients to do is to go to a dog park without your dog. You don't take any dog. You just go to the dog park, maybe with your partner, with your family members, and you watch people and dogs. And you watch, you know, maybe one day you say, you know, today we're going to go to the dog park and look, there are these two dogs. We're going to focus on them. That's all we focus on. Next day you go to the park, you focus on people, you watch people. And I really want you to get a little bit of understanding, also reading people. So when you walk down the footpath, for example, and you see, I often judge people that are oncoming with their dog. If there's someone who holds a retractable leash in their hand, for example, I don't know how far their dog can go. They probably, you know, they might have it locked to like 1.5 meters, or that dog might be at my dog at, you know, in a split seconds because they can. I also see people just, they might walk around with the phone and the dog goes like in all directions of the wind. So I can see that dog has no control. I can see a dog that's pulling and the person just holding the leash at the end. And I can see, oh my God, they probably don't really have control. That dog also has some intent of, maybe getting to my dog. Then I see, if I see people, they might be walking and talking to their dog and they have a connection with their dog. I'm less worried about them having an interaction with us or how the interaction with us, with my team will go. So yeah, look at learn to read people and dogs. This will help you a lot to understand your triggers and also your dog, of course. Next one I have, this is one of my favorites. It's a diagram from Susan Closier. She's an amazing behaviorist from the US. And she was talking about the think and learn zone. So the think and learn zone is where your dog is mentally present. They are connected, they are in the moment, they are present, they can think and they can learn. So that's the green zone. Then we have the yellow zone around it, which is the sticky zone. And she didn't have a name for the red zone, so I call the red zone the red zone. The way how I describe it is, imagine we are sitting in a room. There's not much in that room, pretty sterile room. And you're telling me about your holiday. And I'm all ears. I love holidays. Yay. And then I see a cockroach on the wall. So I was in the green zone until the cockroach appeared. And then I go sticky. Then my attention will be divided because I worry about the cockroach. So what you will tell me, I only perceive some of it. Then the cockroach starts crawling. And I'll be like, I'll get nervous. So I'll probably start shifting from the sticky zone further towards the red zone. Then the cockroach will start flying, will fly off, and I will be in the red zone. I will leave the room. I don't want to deal with you. I got issues if I can't leave the room. I'll probably start pacing and look for spray. But this is where often find the dogs, they are sticky and then they go very easily in red. So we also have different, the size of the rings depends. It depends on your dog, on the day, on the trigger, how your dog feels. They are flexible, they can change in the moment, but I want you to start recognizing where is your dog at. So one of the things Susan recommended is, let's say, if you are in the kitchen and not necessarily when you have a treat in your hand, but you ask your dog in a very calm environment to sit, and that sort of gives you a bit of a benchmark. Where is your dog mentally at? If your dog doesn't know how to sit, there might be a training issue. But if your dog, let's say, sits within 1.5 seconds, so that's your benchmark. And then you take them out of that environment. So for example, in front of your door, out on the footpath, they look around and you ask them to sit. They may do a couple of looks and then sit. So there's already a delayed response, or you might have to re-cue. So this is a bit for you to understand what the sticky zone is. It is also important to know that obedience quite often is trained in the think and learn zone. So when your dog is present and they can learn, so that's where we're going. We do our training with them. And we quite often never really push the envelope to teach them to perform commands or being able to respond to commands in the sticky zone. What I often see happening is that dog learns the command in the green zone, and then suddenly we want to apply it when the dog is in the red zone. There's a saying in the military, you don't rise to the occasion, you sink to the level of your training. And this is probably something, you want to remember, and this is where obedience and the training is really important. Next important for me is, what's your relationship with your dog like? Are you their buddy or their butler? Sounds a bit mean, but it is a little bit like, what does your dog think of you? Does your dog trust that you can handle a situation? There is a concept that comes, I think, out of the child-parent relationship. It's called authentic authority. So we're looking at genuine, transparent. We want to be ethical. We want to be believable, and we want to be respected leader for our dog. I know this term leader in that context, always a bit like, or some people like it, some don't. But in a way, if you want, if you're at work and your workplace is going through a crisis, then you might have the boss who paid for all the massages and the last holiday trip, and it's a nice one, and always lets you go at like 4 p.m. in the afternoon. So, but he might not be the one to lead that ship through a crisis, and that's what your dog needs. Also, one of the things that I want you to learn to do is to learn to send other dogs or humans away. If your dog is concerned about them, they need you. For you to be able to manage that trigger is extremely powerful. So look it up in the notes. It's the Faith and Handler drill from Tyler Mutu. It's a very powerful tool. So I've done things where, I had dogs charging or coming towards a dog that I was working with, and I told my dog to stay, or I just hold them tightly behind me. And I basically walked towards, or I dropped the leash if I could, or handed it to someone else. And I walked into that other dog and used my spatial pressure. And I said, go home, go away. And until that dog was going away. So it will make you look, in your dog's eyes, it will make you look like the superhero, because most dogs in that moment, they just want things to go away. So if you can manage the trigger, if possible, that is very powerful. Then remember, what you permit, you promote. If you allow your dog, your cattle dog, to chase wheels, if you allow them to blow up at little, kids going past with the bicycle, or allow them to chase it, then that gets repeated. And that's behavior that gets repeated becomes very sticky. So what you permit, you promote. Very important also, be consistent in your handling and management, so your dog knows what to expect. Next one is decompression and fulfillment. So allow yourself and your dog to decompress instead of always dragging yourself in that environment that is stressful for both of you. Put your dog in a car, rent a car, go on a bush hike, skip maybe 1 or 2 walks in the week, and instead take them for a 2-hour bush hike on a long line somewhere if you can't let them off leash. Hire a sniff space, go and spend 2 hours with your dog, just enjoying each other without any stress. If you have a day where like things are just like, they are cooking up, your bucket or your cup is full, skip a walk. It's okay. It's fine. Remove your dog from the triggering environment. You have my permission to take a break from that. If your dog gets stressed by other dogs, taking them to your local dog park will probably not help your dog. It might stress them out a lot. Your dog may need a more suitable fulfillment than what they currently have. And is your dog underwhelmed or overwhelmed? Or maybe he's a bit of both. Then the one that is have fun together. I think often when we deal with reactive dogs, we lose the fun. We sort of lose a little bit the reason why we got our dog in the first place, and that connection, because things become very stressful. So I want you to find fun activities to do together. And maybe what your dog thinks is fun is not necessarily what you think is fun. So keep that in mind. I want you to find things that boost yours and your dog's confidence, that make the dopamine, the serotonin, the endorphins go. I want you to find an outlet that is enjoyable for both of you, for your dog. Think of urban agility, scent work, tricks, dog sports, anything like that. Dogs, to be honest, most dogs love doing anything with you, and just taking them in the environment where they always are scared is probably not enjoyable for them. And remember, your dog is a good dog. He does not want to be a a-hole. I'm not allowed to swear today. So he's a good dog. She is a good dog too. So seek and use external support. Surround yourself with a team that supports you. You want to find a good veterinarian. I'm a big fan, that's me personally, I'm a big fan of holistic vets because they just look differently under the bonnet. But, find a good vet, someone who you trust, and maybe don't be afraid to change vets. If your vet doesn't support you in the way how you need it, don't be afraid to find other support. Find a good behaviorist or a vet behaviorist that can be very helpful, good trainer, a skilled and supportive trainer. who takes you on that journey. Body workers are usually good, like a physio who can assist with like reducing dog's pain, identifying pain. Pet nutritionists are great. And most importantly, also supportive community, friends and family that can help you where you need it. And last thing, guys, I want to do is I want to go through a few case studies of cases that I either worked with in the past and or recently are working with. So we're going to start off with little Maxi, the frustrated Frenchie. So Maxi moved from the Blue Mountains to Bondi Junction. In the Blue Mountains, he had a big backyard, bushwalks, outings to the park. He played with other dogs, and suddenly he comes to a townhouse, a tiny townhouse with a tiny courtyard in Bondi Junction. His family's family life started to get busy. They now also had a toddler that was about 2 years old when I met them. So they were time poor. The space he lived in was very, very different. And Maxi was just a dog that wanted to let off some steam. So he walked out of the door and he basically was so frustrated with his life. His arousal was up because there was also a lot going on in the environment, but mainly it was his world became so small. He was not happy and he walked out of the door and he pretty much felt like he wanted to punch someone in the face. There was a lot of frustration in this little dog. He probably was also a bit overstimulated with other dogs. So with Maxi, we reintroduced fulfilling activities. I said to him, go on a bushwalk, urban foraging. We taught him to walk on a loose leash. We did a leave it command. We introduced really structured play. And before they went on a walk, they would basically now take him and they would play on they would play tug of war. And they also had a spring pool set up in the backyard. So they would get him to let out some steam. And then they put the leash on, gave him a couple of minutes to relax. Then they put the leash on, they took him out for a walk. And it took only a couple of sessions and he was a very different dog. So we focused on mental stimulation, better connection with his owners. And he loved carrying a toy around. So we allowed little Maxi to take his toy on walks. He thought that was fantastic. Then this is a case about Jasmine, and Jasmine is a assistance dog that I met when she was 3 years old, and I think by that time she had struggled with reactivity for about half a year to a year. Reactivity, mainly space, was the issue. So when we were talking about the history of this dog, we discovered that she had a traumatic experience as a puppy. Nothing where we humans would say, oh, she didn't end up at the vet, she didn't get puncture wounds or anything, but it was traumatic for her because she got almost ambushed when she was at puppy school. An adult dog came out of a consult room at the vet and sort of lunged at her. And that one incident was enough to tip for her to leave a mark. We see that quite often with puppies when they have experience as puppies. Let's say they get bowled over or they get attacked as puppies or something, that the reactive behavior doesn't come out until this dog is a young adult or an adult and is a bit more aware of what they can do and the power or the capabilities they have. So if you see these things come, if your puppy has an unpleasant, sometimes when you see these behaviors, the root cause may not be in the immediate past. It might actually be somewhere in their puppyhood. So what we did with her is we taught her owner to send other dogs away, pretty much. We built her confidence to step in and to say, hey, go away. And just her advocating for her dog's space really, really made a big difference for Jasmine. We did controlled setups for that where I used my dogs. And we reinforced calm behaviors. Usually Jasmine was much better when she was off leash and she could create distance, and that distance was respected by other dogs. So it was just mainly on leash when she couldn't go anywhere. Next one is Louie, our Labradoodle. So Louie became increasingly reactive from around 18 months of age, particularly towards like larger muscular dogs. And around that time, he also became a bit wary of people. So, which is quite common that during the teenage of a dog, they start to become a little bit big feelings. Louie is not a very brave dog. He's a bit anxious. But when we assessed him for the reactivity, we also noticed that he is in a fair bit, that he was not moving well. He was probably in a fair bit of pain. He was shortly after diagnosed with hip dysplasia. So pain can certainly contribute to reactivity. So do not underestimate that. Let's say he played when he was a year old with other dogs, maybe like the big black ones or so, their body slammed into him. So what he does is he connects pain equals that type of dog. And until we also fix that pain or address the pain, we're probably fighting a bit of an uphill battle with him. So confidence building, safe distance, exposure, and so on was what we recommended with Louie. Then this one was a very interesting case. It's about Denver, a young Staffy, and she had a history of a bit very rough and pretty full-on play as a puppy. So I saw her in a local dog park when she must have been about 8 and 9 months of age. That was before I knew that her dad and her as clients, but I saw her in my thought, and I remember her playing with the other dogs. So she was very full on, and what I was thinking a bit inappropriate for a dog that age. And I thought, wow, this dog might become trouble. So anyway, a few months later, about 8, 9, half a year later or so, I get contacted by the owner. He sends me a photo, and I'm like, oh, wow, this is the dog that I saw 6 months ago. So apparently she was barking at small dogs. She was reacting to mainly small dogs. And which turned out to be, which I thought at first she was a bit overexcited, or maybe there's a bit of a predatory excitement there, but mainly excitement. But then when I used my dog to test her, I saw that there was actually fear related to it. So what happened was, as she grew and became more powerful, her boisterous play with other dogs was definitely not suitable for smaller dogs anymore. So every time she played with a little dog, and she got in trouble by her dad, and she got corrected for it. So she started to build an association where small dogs equals me getting in trouble, me getting a bit scared. So she developed a fear response towards small dogs. That probably also together with the learned over arousal that she learned through interacting with other dogs. Oh, I see them, I can go full on, and cortisol and adrenaline is up. So that also gets patterned. So probably didn't help. So we worked with her on, obedience, impulse control. We counter conditioned smaller dogs. We invested a lot in play, and strengthening the relationship with her then was the big one, where we taught basically taught her that he is the best thing ever. He's the coolest play buddy. So we invested a lot in that relationship. Then we have little Poppy, who started to bark at the TV. So what happened is the owners were watching the races, and they had like a little get together with friends, and horses go over the screen. Poppy is a bit highly strung anyway. She loves to, she's a bit of a dopamine and adrenaline junkie that struggles to settle, and she likes to have her foot on the gas pedal. So horses go over the screen. She probably did a couple of barks, and then there is the people that are having a little party there. They are like looking at Poppy, and they go like, ha ha ha, this is so funny. And it didn't take many repetitions for Poppy to actually start to go, well, this is enjoyable. This is a lot of fun. So, and then it ended up a couple of months later, the family couldn't watch Westworld anymore. So in a board and train with me, we worked on crate training. We established relaxation routines. We used choose and enrichment to sort of redirect her from constantly staring and expecting something at the TV. We also gradually broke the TV sort of down and reintroduced it with slow motion, still pictures, you know, low volume to high volume. We taught her also, we did some obedience exercises around impulse control, which was very a big one for her. Then I think this is my last case. So we got little Sanji, a dog that I'm working with at the moment. She's a Coolie cross, cattle dog cross, and she lives in a very busy, very built-up area in Sydney, in Vermont, and she developed an intense reactivity to pretty much anything that has wheels. So even if there would be a wheelchair in front of her, she'll, in standing and not even moving, she'll target the wheel. So it's a very common issue for herders. They like when the thing moves, and if it doesn't move, they like to make it move. So they go for this. And when you think about, they put two intense herding breeds with a high sensitivity to movement into one dog. Sometimes you get one where you get the really intensity of two of them. So we are currently working on, giving her a bit of a bit more fulfillment in her life, because I think she's a bit underwhelmed with her lifestyle, and she's overwhelmed with her environment. We're doing urban agility. We teach her to direct away from the trigger. We are doing lots of play at the moment that we are building up, so she can find other fulfillment and walks. And then obviously we need to improve her obedience as well. So yeah, that's Sanji. So some of you might ask, so wow, that's a lot of information. There's so much, but where do I start? Here are my top 5 tips when I see clients. I want you to understand the trigger, the stress layers, the emotions, the thresholds, what is going on. Take the layered stress level, take the layered stress model, print it out and start writing. And it doesn't need to be that you fill this out or have all the answers in one session. Sometimes, make it an exercise with your partner or your family members and go, hey, look, what do you think we can put in here? You might not have all the answers, then engage a professional. The other thing is stop your dog from rehearsing behavior that you like to get rid of. If you keep putting them in the situations where they blow up over and over again, it will not help. Unless you have a strategy, you keep that lid on. It's just gonna keep going on and probably get worse. A big one for me is the ability to disengage from the trigger. So this is where the disengagement game comes in, the leave it command, the ability to self-settle and impulse control, cute relaxation. So this sits all in the bucket where I'm trying to get my dog to be able to work more in the sticky zone than to have better capabilities to disengage from this trigger in the sticky zone, so I don't have to deal with the red zone. Provide authentic leadership, loose leash walking, relationship, taking charge. Does your dog know that they can trust you, or are you just the one that's holding them back when they want to go forward? Are you just the thing at the end of the leash, or is there something where your dog can trust that you can guide them through the situation? And give your dog a fulfilled life. As I said, there's a lot of dogs out there that might be a little bit underwhelmed with what is going on in their life, or they might be overwhelmed to some extent. Your dog deserves it. So yeah, that's my top 5 tips. And a nice analogy that we did is, because we often get asked, so, like now I have to keep my dog on leash, or can't I take him to the dog park anymore? And the question is sometimes, you need to take charge of this. You wouldn't let a child walk across the road by itself. So just taking them on the hand and guiding them, and not just hoping that your dog might stop the behavior by itself, is probably the way forward. So keep that in mind. They need you to help them. And then here is the sources. You can go through them when we send you the pack. And that's it. There we go. Now we have a whole lot of questions. All right, I'm just gonna put up the questions. If a dog runs at another dog but does not do anything, is that reactiveness? Look, could be. I would say it's probably a little bit rude, Rhonda, to be honest. Imagine sometimes I had a client a couple of years ago, he would charge a little spoodle, about 5 kilos, but he would charge at other dogs. He would, especially big dogs. And you would think that's a bit stupid. You are 5 kilos and you are charging at a, 30, 40 kilo German Shepherd. But he was scared of big dogs, but he also learned that in most cases, he can control the interaction. So if I go first and I intimidate that dog, then I control the interaction, keep myself safe. What he also knew is that he had his mom's backup, because so what we worked on with this dog is that I said, well, if you go out and you do this stuff, then you are on your own, mate. So he stopped charging at dogs with me. I would probably not allow him to do that. He, might be simply putting him on a long line for a little bit. It's just putting him in a spot where he's also pretty vulnerable. People jogging, Frenchie. So Wendy's asking, my Frenchie reacts to wheels, and people jogging, I can control if I can see. But what causes her to react is if they come from behind closely and quickly. So look, this is very, very common. And I would probably help my dog, first of all, a little bit to plan my walks a little bit. And then you could work on setups, for example, where you might have someone who comes at a slower speed on with a bicycle, go past them. You can work with the distance. So I would probably use desensitization as one of my go-to methods. I would also use the engagement-disengagement game. And find, like, for example, sometimes in Sydney we have a place, it's called it's called Queen's Park Centennial Park, and there's like a big sort of track where cyclists are in the afternoon, and they come predictively. There's a cyclist probably every 5 or 10 seconds. So this is where I trained my Spitz to not chase bicycles anymore, because I had them come predictably, and I had a lot. In half an hour, we had, I think, about 30, 40 bikes come. Now, maybe not that much, but maybe 15 bikes come past, and 2 sessions, and my dog did not chase a bicycle anymore. A two-step Frenchies, different training tips to other pups. So the question is, are there some breeds that are a bit more stubborn than others? Look, I wouldn't say they are necessarily breeds. Look, some breeds are more happy to work or much easier to work. That's why a lot of people have border collies if they get into dog training. Some breeds, they like to, they are a bit more, they like a bit more conflict. For example, I find sometimes the stuffies, they really like a bit of conflict and a bit of oomph, and that is their thing. But it doesn't mean that all of them are like this. So you want to look at the dog in front of you. Oh, there's a few Frenchies here. There's a Frenchie that's obsessed on the TV. So yeah, again, I put in the case about the TV. So that is probably something that can help you. Tried the food, where blah, blah, blah. I tried the food bit when my dog is passing other dogs, but he goes for the other dogs thinking they are going to get the food. So if he's resource guarding, maybe you don't need the food. Maybe try a toy or something. It's also a bit of, maybe the distance is a little bit too close. If he resource guards, food might not be the right thing to do. You could also teach him to look at you while you go past, and then reward him as you are past. Then telling people to telling dogs and people to go away. Emilia, this is the faith in handler drill that and it's in the notes at the end of the presentation. How to stop my collie from circling the table when he hears knives and forks or plates clicking. Not really sure why he started this, but I would probably send him on either on a bed and tell him to go on the bed. I would also see what he does with the clicking of the noises when there is no table, like kind of, is this just the thing that he's found when it's in the kitchen and he likes spinning? I would also consider crate training, place training, so something. It's probably for me to, can you still hold it together? Find information on controlled socialization. That's a big one. The controlled socialization is, you probably want to contact a dog trainer in your area who can help you with that, or who might have contact. Other than that, some doggy daycares are pretty good places. Some of them are not. So the doggy daycare that I work with in Sydney a lot, they are actually quite good with socialization. And sometimes I send them dogs that need a bit of confidence building, and I give them a brief and I tell them, hey, look, I want to send you this client. I think she needs this and type of dogs. Can you, can they come maybe once or twice a week or so? So that's the avenue there. You could also Google dog socialization classes. Some areas have classes like that. Yeah, so two Boston Terriers, male, they attack each other when they see a cat or another dogs. Probably we would call that redirected aggression. In a way, they don't know where to go with that. I would probably start with one of them at a time, see how one of them reacts to the trigger and get that basically really, really turned down. Because I doubt that either of them are absolutely fine with the trigger. They probably, when they are together, it just all accumulates and they work each other up and blow up. So, and then I would teach them, what I often do is I teach them to walk on either side. So one walks on the right and one walks on the left, and they are not allowed to go bang. But before you do that, you want to make sure that each of them is able to deal with the trigger on their own. Kerstin Edwards asking about dog is territorial in the common area in the unit, reacts to certain dogs entering. I already have him on a long leash. I would practice that a little bit, and basically I would tell him also that this is not his backyard. So I would keep an eye on like territorial behaviors, like the fence, walking around the fencing, around the gate access. I would do things like where if I let him in the backyard, I don't just let him barge in. I will step in the yard first. I'll tell him that he's just a guest there. And I would do things where I teach him to settle. I would keep him maybe even on a shorter leash, teach him to go on a place and stay there when another dog enters. So this is more around that. I do not allow him to see that as his territory, if that makes sense. So marking is also a thing there that you want to keep an eye on. My dog attention barks at visitors. So that's Nikki. Also, the TV thing is huge. I touched base on that before. With the visitors, look, it's probably a bit of territorial. Usually, one of the easiest ways for me is that I put my dogs away. When a visitor walks in, I crate train, I put the crate in, I put the lid, the cover down. I come in, I settle my guests, and then when my dog is calm, I open up the blinds. If they want attention, taking the attention away for that behavior is probably like, in a way, negative punishment, we would call it. So the behavior, if you do this, you can't get attention from them if it's attention. If it's fear barking, you might have something like the faith and handler drills, generally also a good one. Yeah, so Chelsea, with your question about reactivity and force positive how do you enforce positive reinforcement with food and toys if they are so highly strung? Have a look at the video that I referred to from Chad Mackin, the Solving Dog Reactivity video. a video on YouTube that's he talks through in a bit more detail. So, and he also explains that sometimes you might have to wait for a little bit until that arousal has settled to the point where they can actually eat the food. Box picket dog and people with hats, and dark-skinned people. So that's Michelle, her little spoodle. He's probably scared of them for whatever reason. You know, maybe that's dark-skinned people. He's picked up a certain behavior from someone. But this is, yeah, this is something where you can counter condition. Blah, blah, blah. So Natalie's dog goes crazy when you pick up the harness and the lead. And so what I would do is I'll pick up the harness on the lead, and I kind of sort of desensitize her to me picking that up. And most of the time when you pick up the harness and the lead, you probably go and do something, like you go and take them for a walk or for a car ride or something that they get very excited about. So I'll take the leash, I'll take the harness, and I just put that to the side on the counter, and I just wait it out. So the predictability of that being a precursor for, hey, now we're going to do something exciting, is going to drop. So we want to make that not a chained association anymore. Stop your dog jumping on people. Jack Russell that loves people. Look, this is a different, that's for me more of an obedience exercise, but look up parking, dogs parking, calming exercises, sit and so on, is something that I would like to, to not allow my dog. And I'm also quite protective about my dogs, strangers, reinforcing that behavior, because he's a Jack Russell. And if he, you know, if you ask him to sit and then he sort of jumps at the person and the person goes like, oh, it's fine, and, you know, pets them, then they are not really helping you. So my go-to is often that I say, hey, no, you can't pet my dog. He's in training to become an assistance dog. And then I do parking exercises and things like that. Yeah, so I will be sending out the deck to everyone. So we will get my presentation, and the resources slide will be in there. Walks with 2 other dogs. And then, so probably your little, someone anonymous said their smooth fox terrier walks with 2 other dogs and then goes nuts when they are leaving to go home. Well, he probably just misses them, goes crazy. Very hard to say without seeing it, but he might go like, what? My friend's going, if he enjoys them, might be like, hey, you shouldn't be leaving. So maybe you can give your dog, instead of just leaving him hang there in like, oh my God, my buddies are going, you could give him a bully stick, you know, they leave, you give your dog a bully stick and he doesn't feel like he's missing out on any of the action. So I think I'm just looking at the chat. Sorry, guys, we are going a little bit over here with our questions. And guys, feel free to you know, leave if you need to leave. There will be a recording sent out, so all of the questions here and my answers will be in the recording. So what do I do when food or toy doesn't get my dog's attention? Again, that was Siri Cambrai. Have a look at the video from Chad Macking that I referred to. That's a really good one where he explains what is actually going on. And then sometimes it doesn't matter if your dog doesn't immediately go for the food. Candice says, my 4-year-old cavoodle seems to be very unsocial with other dogs. Whenever she sees another dog, no matter new ones or ones that she's met, she will keep barking and seems to be nervous and scared. One time when we cared for 2 other dogs of our friends for a few days, during those few days, she barked and seemed aggressive initially. Even the dogs were friendly, want to play with her. She would settle after, but you know what, she then hid herself in her room. So look, Candice, your little cavoodle does not want to hang out with other dogs. For her, it was the worst thing that you brought these 2 dogs in to look after them. So I probably wouldn't offer that them. I would do a lot of counter conditioning with her if you can. I would make sure that other dogs stay away from her. She feels unsafe. She does not want them. And and the more you probably try to socialize her, the more she might feel like you throw her in hell. So I want you to maybe pay attention to and respect what she actually needs, and that the socialization route for her might just not be the one. She just doesn't want to deal with them. My dog charges and barks. So that's Joanna, charges and barks. But if they bark back, he screams. Yeah, he probably didn't expect that, because then, oh shit, what situation did I put myself in? So again, what I said earlier about the little spoodle or the lady where the dog charges at other dogs, I do not allow that. That is, sometimes your dog, overthinks a little bit their capabilities and puts themselves in a situation that can be very dangerous. So it needs you to put your thinking at on and tell them a little bit like what is allowed and what is not allowed. Any tips on dogs that aren't food not motivated and don't respond well to treats, in loose leash walking, etc.? So find out what triggers your dog. Like sometimes when with the loose leash walking, some dogs, they just want to sniff the whole area. So I use environment as a reinforcer, as a reward. So I teach them, yeah, you can go and sniff that tree, but you can't just sniff it. You can't just get there if you pull. So I teach them that things in the environment are the reinforcement. Some dogs also really like when you talk to them. I have a client, like when she walks with her dog, she tells him how good he's looking, how great her day was, how great he is, that he has the cutest ears ever, and what a cute tail. And she just waffles. She tells him her life story every day. And they have the most beautiful loose leash work because all he wants is her attention. So kind of look a little bit what your dog likes. Dog to jump on people while walking past on a leash. Look, that would be something where I would really enforce a loose leash walking and a leave it, or even tell them off for jumping on people. It's a bit depending on what your dog wants, but most of the time when they do this, they like the reaction of the other person. Then 5-year-old rescue. So Jasmine saying 5-year-old rescue. Frenchie is aggressive even when he sees a dog across the road. Barking, very anxious, barking on the children's playgrounds, hyper aroused on walks, pulls on leash. Boisterous, you have a 4-year-old child. Do basic training and look command to distract, but struggling him getting less distractive. I hope, look, he might probably be a good candidate for seeing a trainer, someone who can help you to increase. It might also be that your obedience is now a little bit stuck, so you plateaued on that level. To find a trainer to sort of help you a little bit to push that a bit, or to find an activity that you can do with your dog. There might be also something where you can say, well, maybe I can get a friend to come with me and look after my 4-year-old child when I take my dog to training. Also think about, like, if your child, if you can take your dog out without your child, I don't know if you always take them together, you might have a lot on your hands when you take your dog for a walk. And I often recommend to just be able to focus on your dog. It's very stressful. It's also, your dog notice that you can't give them the support that they need. So yeah, kind of the engagement, disengagement protocol is also a nice one to teach them, like to make it an auto response that when they see the trigger to look at you. I think, guys, we went through everything and we are only 30 minutes over, which is amazing. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed our webinar. I know it's a big topic. If anyone needs help, please reach out to a local trainer. I'm based in Sydney. If anyone needs help in Sydney area, or if you have questions and look for a trainer in your area, feel free to message me. And, I can put my feelers out to see if there's anyone who I can recommend. But the biggest takeaway is probably, I know you are not alone. There's many people out there that, struggle with that and with their dog, and find something to enjoy your dog again. That's probably a big one. So, all right, guys, thank you so much. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you at our next webinar. Bye-bye.